Now let us discuss about constraint on binary relationship types. Relationship types usually have certain constraints that limit the possible combination of entities that may participate in the corresponding relationship sets. Now just imagine that certain company rule or a company rule is like that employee must work for certain department. So some constraint in a schema is set which is defining that every employee should participate in certain department. And constraints in a binary relationship types can be classified into two categories. One is cardinality ratio and participation. Now let us discuss what is a cardinality ratio. In this, the binary relationship specifies the minimum number of relationship instances that entity can participate in. For example, in works for binary relationship between employee and the department, there is a cardinality ratio of 1:n. So let us try to understand how it is. If you come to employee table, so here you just see one employee or each employee must participate or must work for one department. So department will be unique. So the ratio between department and employee will be 1:n. If you take a reverse of that, between employee and department it will be n:1. So that type of relationship is called as a cardinality ratio of 1:n. Similarly, the cardinality ratio can be set to 1:1 ratio, where you can see here employee manages department. Employee manages department means, so we'll just go back and check here. Between employee and department there is a one more type of relationship, that is 1:1 relationship, which is managing or manages. That means employee can manage one department, may or may not, because here you see some employees they are not managing any departments. It's a partial, what we call, it's a partial participation, correct? Now such relationship we can call it as a 1:1 cardinality ratio, where each employee manages a single department, that is 1:1. Now so far we have discussed about 1:1, 1:n or n:1. There is another type of cardinality ratio which is m:n. Here you see, if you consider employee 2, I will just take a note here. If you take employee 2, just a minute. If you take employee 2, here you can see employee 2 works for project 1 or project 4. So that is, he is working for m number of projects, correct? Means many to many. If it is 1:1, it's a 1:1, it is 1:1 relationship. If it is 1:n, it is a 1:many relationship. If it is n:1, it is many to one relationship. If it is m:1n, it is many to many relationship. Similarly, if you consider this project P4, on this project employee E2 and employee E4 is working. So such ratio is called as a m:n relationship on works on. Here if you go back to the diagram, if you go back here, so just a minute, if you just click on work for, here you can see the relationship between employee and project on which he is working, it is m:n. The relationship is m:n. That means many number of employees will work on a single project. Similarly, a single employee can work on many projects. Such relationship or cardinality ratio is called as a m:n. So this cardinality ratio is one of the very important topic as far as the DBMS is concerned. Now one of the type of constraints we have already discussed, that is a cardinality ratio. Let us discuss about the participation constraint and existence dependencies. Actually, participation constraint specifies the existence of an entity depending on its being related to another entity via relationship type. So we have to go through this definition very clearly now. Existence of an entity depends on its being related to another entity via relationship type. That means whether one entity is participating in another or another entity is participating in the previous one. So such things are based on the participation of the entity. Now if you consider employee, whether the employee is working on the project or not, or if he is working on project, all employees are working or not, such concepts we can take it in this. Basically these are classified into two categories. One is total participation and another one is partial participation. So we will go back for works for relationship. Here you see each employee here is working for some department. So this type of participation we call it as a total participation. You see here all the employees will belong to one of the department, and such participation we call it as a total participation. You cannot say that any of the employees is out of the department, so he has to participate. So works for relationship is a total relationship or total participation we can call. Similarly, there is another relationship, manages. Both these things we have discussed it in our checked it in a ER diagram also. Employee manages a department. So the cardinality ratio for this one is 1:1, which we have already discussed. Here you see employee 3, employee 5 and employee 6. They are managing D1, department 1, department 2, department 3. Okay. Now if you go into the table construction, there you see the managers. Some 3 managers they are managing, correct? Those are management. They are doing a managing, or they are managing the department. But if you look into this E1, E2, E3 and E7, they are not managing any department. So it is not a full participation or total participation. Such participation we can call it as a partial participation.